Wonders never cease to amaze. It actually worked on the first try tonight. We're gonna do some nice green wood tonight. Got some from a fellow the other day. So that's what we're gonna do to start the day anyhow. There's a little crack on the end. Here's where you kind of get into wasting a little bit of wood, but it does grow on trees, so we're not gonna worry too much about it. Gonna stay closer. I'll show you once I cut the end off of this. Log is rather weirdly shaped. So, little cardboard template. Gonna cut it on the bandsaw. I do not have a camera there, so you won't be able to see that. Just be able to see the lovely back of myself. But I will cut around that round, or the round cardboard circle is what I will do with that. Ah. Well, this stuff is heavy. This is a red mulberry, I think is what he told me it was. We're using my $1 dust collection of a shop vac that I got at a public sale. And it has lasted me actually now probably for a couple years. Nice and small. Yeah, the hose. Rather than trying to use the big 4-inch dust hose off the back, is what's there. This actually has a small shop vac hose, the PVC pipe going up into it. Actually goes right directly around the bandsaw blade. So it actually does a really good job as far as dust collection goes. Much better than the 4-inch port that comes with the saw. So drill a hole, get through everything, all the bark through the cambium layer into solid wood. Go over here to my bench. I don't pound on the bedways. Not really a good idea. On the floor would probably be better, but then you'd have to bend over. I don't want to do that either. Drive that as hard as what I thought I did, but it'll be okay. I use my live center without the point in, so it's just a ring. That will give me the flexibility of being able to move it wherever I want. however I want, which is what I'm after. So now I'll bring the tool rest up fairly close because we're going to maneuver this around a bit because this thing, as you can see from that view there, is very oddly shaped. Now, if you wanted that oddly shaped piece, you could probably leave it like that, but that also creates a whole bunch of issues on balance. I don't think I'm going to be able to actually get this one totally in balance, but I'm definitely going to get it closer. So now we're probably less than 3/4 of an inch. Actually, these two high lobes are not even the same. Gotta go that way. Those two I do want sort of closer together, closer to being the same. Otherwise, we're going to have a situation of how slow we're going to have to go. That one there. Still could be a little bit right there. From there, we're going to start cutting so we can get it closer to being a circle around this. Close up our shower curtains because this will definitely make a mess for sure. And I'll probably just use, I'm more used to using my half-inch bowl gouge than I am a bigger size. So that's where we'll start. Spin by hand, make sure, because it's actually close at one point, right down there. Slow of a speed is what we can start, which is very slow. Off to the side, not in the line of fire. Make sure everything's tight. This thing is really going to fight, I'm sure. We're going to get a whopping 600 RPMs out of it. So now we're going to be in the situation of super patient. We'll have to move very, very slowly. They're going to have to back off in the cut because down here is where it's way out of whack. And I don't want to see the tool bouncing like it wants to right there. It's kind of hard to see the shadow out there. So if I push any effort forward rather than just along, it wants to bounce. And I don't want it to bounce. I don't want to slow the motor down like I just did there. I could switch. It's still sitting on the high-speed pulleys. So we've touched over there. Nothing touched there yet, or there. So we got a bit of a ways to go with it to get it round. And then we'll have to see from there. We'll probably move it around again. Question is, can we get a couple RPMs out of it? About 100. It's starting to make the lathe bounce. A little bounce won't hurt it. I'd rather have a little bit of bounce to it and be able to cut a little quicker. Probably should just switch belts and be done with it. As you can see, I can slow it down pretty quickly. And as we remove some material down there, we picked up a huge vibration. It's not overly uncommon. You just kind of have to be aware of it. Still a bit of a crack right there, though. That'll go away. I'm just going to switch belts over to the power end of it. Still not quite round. There. Now I'm going to come back since I've taken some stuff off. Almost an inch there. We still have part there. I think we're probably going to have to live with that. Not that I, not that I really like to live with that, but nature rules the roost when it comes to that. So kind of have to gonna deal with what we have. They look kind of interesting when they're done, but they're much harder to do when you can't get them in balance. Because it's going to take a lot more patience, a lot better tool control. Nothing wrong with turning slow, because our tool control will become better, because we can't rely on speed to make a difference. Doesn't make it. It does make it much more difficult on the upper end of it, where there's air space in there when it's running slow. I'm also starting to sort of cheat a little bit, and I'm tapering it as I go down. It's going the wrong direction, but at this point it doesn't really matter, because we're about ready to get busy on the end, and then we'll make it into a shape going from bottom to top. So that should have us round. Wouldn't see why it wouldn't be. Yep. That's working its way up a little bit. If the bark stays on this, it probably will make a pretty interesting piece. Of course, the big question is if the bark stays on. So now we'll flatten out the bottom. Teeny tiny little crack. It goes up to about there. And then it goes up to there. Doesn't, it might actually go the whole way across. We'll figure that out once we get into it a little bit further. We spin by hand, make sure it's not going to hit anything. Have a very bad day. Okay, so we're flat. The crack's disappearing. Nope, still there. Doesn't appear. Well, there's one there. There's one there. They should all go away. We're gonna get rid of a little bit more material on this. It's gonna be shallow, which I think will maybe make it a little bit more attractive. This one crack that's up here comes over to here, and there's definitely a line, sort of, not totally going to each one of them, but it's very close. So we've got to eliminate the stuff that's going to cause us problems. Because this is green, so it's got to dry. You should be able to pick up some speed, though. A little bit. Still not a lot. Good and wet, though. Okay, there's the last remnants of those cracks. There, there. I think they'll be inside of the, definitely should be inside of the tenant. Uh, take a little bit more off, another quarter of an inch. Also start getting rid of the corners around here. guess we could make it more sensible and go there. Move this camera a bit. More like there. Better view. Yep. Okay. So there's a tiny bit of remnants of that crack right there. Not really too concerned about it. Almost looks like could be some separation even. Let's hope not. So from here, I think we'll go ahead and get a tenant on it. Let's see. Figure that one. So if I go to the big, I wish I had a set of jaws in between these two, because the next one up is going to be really big. They don't, Bookmark for whatever reason doesn't seem to like to do that. Yeah, that's going to be too big. It's going to be too hard to make the shape that I would want to make. So we'll just live with the different jaws. Switch to a little bit shorter tool rest. Don't need that much of it right now. Still not gonna let, it's not gonna, I don't think it's gonna ever let me go to where I would like it to go, speed wise. Because there's too much variation in the top of this thing. Get rid of that material I needed to establish where my tenant's gonna be, thereabout. Now we know. It's gonna be very shallow. That's an unsupported unbevel supported cut. It's tearing the grain up, but as you see, it allowed me to make some very quick cuts, remove a bunch of material, and that's really all I was after, is to get rid of the material and can come back in. And now we'll use our friend the bevel, start to make our shape. Cut's gonna get too big out there. Back off one more time and get rid of the remainder of the corner. Be able to come back to the original one. Now we need some space to move our tool rests in. You can see now we have a clean cut. You can't get totally in there and use the bevel. I can, but it's going to be a little bit different of a cut. It's something I've never even tried to teach somebody, because I'm going to use the bevel down along the wing. It can be a very aggressive cut if you do it wrong. So it's a very, very light touch. Still may not be perfectly smooth. It'll certainly be smooth enough to make that curve. See whether it was smooth enough, which it is. All I'm looking for is no torn grain. I'm not worried if there's some little ripples in there. I just want it to be pretty well cleanly cut, which it is. Actually, let's try something different. Switch to a different gouge with a little bit of a micro bevel. It still should be right around that 60-degree mark anyhow. It might let me get in there a little bit further. Not really, but sort of. Not quite to the top yet. See how close we are. And another inch there. No. That also tells me I did a pretty good job by the amount of material that's left there and there. Of course, this has already been cut. And it is a rough turn bowl. We're not going for a perfect shape. I want it to be pretty close though, because as it dries, it's going to warp and twist and everything else. But it's a little easier to come back and start with something that was sort of the right shape to start with. So just take a little bit more, another eighth of an inch. I hear where the wings are at, and see I stopped and back off a little bit and think about what I'm doing so that I'm not pushing forward and just gliding along. I don't want the tool to bounce. And you're not going to get away from a little bit of a bounce just by virtue of there's such a big airspace in there. They're still not quite to the top. Reposition the tool rest a little bit. I left a line in here so I have a place to pick up the cut. Bring the tool rest around so that I don't have the tool overhang. Because when I have that big of an overhang and unsupported areas, makes a bit of a difference. We're going to do some green woodworking tonight. You got to get after some of this stuff. Just a piece of red mulberry that the wood guy gave me the other night at a wood turning meeting. So it's kind of a bright yellow color, actually. I'm not sure why they call it a red mulberry, but it's what it is. So we're just giving it a sort of a general shape on the outside. Definitely have a kind of a big ridge right there, but it's okay. We'll leave that alone. There's a bit of a, could use a bit of cleanup all the way around, but I mean, just after a general shape, because I'll leave it probably, this one I'll probably leave at least an inch, if not more towards inch and a quarter. This is freshly cut. This is sopping wet. It's throwing water. Sticking to the tool, sticking to my hands. This is the kind of wood I like to work with, though. Let's see if I can straighten this out a little bit. Yeah, especially since how I spent the last 2 days teaching classes, and it's all kiln dried wood, which is harder, very dusty. And my negative comment that I get on my class is that people have a little bit harder time of hearing me. And I'm like, well, there's 4 lathes running and two big air filters running in that room. So I'm done. I pretty much have a sore throat from trying to talk and suck in the dust. But it is fun. It's kind of it's a challenge trying to get people to understand, understand that look right there. Bevel supported cut the whole entire way. That's I'm still working on that. That's when I'm very quiet when I'm turning like this. It's because my little brain is trying to come up with different ways, trying to show it, explain it, what it means, not just what it looks like, how to accomplish it. It'll give us our nice little dovetail tenon. Take a little bit of material out down there because that's not very good. And leave it bigger than my mark. That mark is sort of an exact, almost like an exact mark for that chuck. What I'm studying now is the fact of what the depth would be there versus the diameter. I know I started out at around 9 inches. So this is going to finish up eventually somewhere around 4 inches. So that should be good. I don't want to get close to the 50% mark on something like this, especially one that's got a low side and two high sides, and even a little dip going back between the two high sides. This is a very, I don't know what you want to call it, a very oddly shaped log. So I knew it was going to be more work, but the end result, hopefully, will pay off. I'm certainly not used to turning it. I'm under 700 RPM right now. So I'm not used to turning at that speed. Not that it's not a bad thing. Why don't they make a little flip at the end of the wings? Um, I want them to go straight up. In this case, the log is it is what it is. I can't change that fact. Normally, when I do when you're going to see more of them, because I have some little holly ones, and we'll be able to breeze through them because they're really little, and it's very even. So normally, when you do a natural edge, you would have this little dip, but when you go around on this side, it's got a huge dip compared to the other side.
And actually this one, rather than it just being a straight in dip, it actually is dipping down and coming back up. You'll see once you get around the out or take the stuff out of the inside, you're gonna find that this is gonna it's gonna definitely be a different look than what if the log was more if you get the log more in balance as far as these two high points being the same, two low points being the same, these are considerably different. You could probably even sort of measure it a little bit to see, maybe explain it better what I'm looking at. So if I look at that, step back, somewhere around 3 inches, a little better from there. On this side, we're down more in the 2.5 inch category. So there's a 1/2 inch difference between that side and that side, which is what makes this thing out of balance. Because these two higher points are pretty much dead on. So when two of the points are not equal, it's creating vibration and not allowing me to turn at the speed I would want to. Because believe me, this would be a whole lot easier to spin at 1,000 RPMs or even higher. Because it only started out at 9 inches in diameter, so it's not huge. So I should be able to spin it up a whole lot faster than what it is. But because it's so out of balance, I can't. If this is not, oh, never mind. It's not going to do that. It's not going to stay on there. Okay. Be that way. I don't really need to mark a center point on it anyhow. So by the time it gets done warping and carrying on, we'll manipulate it at that point. Now we get rid of the tailstock. Get to a chuck. Get this inside knocked out. One of the little ones that we can breeze through. I do have the other half of this log yet. It's still, yeah, right. So, grain running up and down in between the jaws. It'll give us the best grip, more consistent grip. Good, I did leave it big enough. If I could get jaws that were just a little bit, if I could get them that they grip something maybe more like a 1/2 inch bigger than that. But every time I've looked, they don't have anything. These I think they consider 3 inch jaws, and then they go to 4 inch, 5 inch, and it just doesn't go longer. So we can sneak in here. So that should work. So we change something, we're going to slow down. We're going to work our speed back up a little bit, knowing full well that we're not going to get real high before we pick up a whole lot of vibration. And that's about it. So we'll get rid of some of the material in here first.
Still very uneven. Now it's moving slow in there, so I'm trying to move too fast. That's why it wants to bounce. I move at the speed that it wants to be cut at. Could eliminate some of the bounce anyhow. Or all of it. I do. I've gotten very used to it. It actually can save you time. Yeah, see, that's what I thought. We're not even, I'm down in that area probably almost an inch and we still haven't touched over there yet. I'll set my dividers. I think we'll leave it about an inch and an eighth maybe. I hate to leave them too thick, then they take too long to dry. But I've never worked with this, so I don't know how bad this thing is going to move. Let's go to inch and a quarter. Got another quarter of an inch to take out of it. Speed allows you to make more efficient cuts. You can go a little bit faster, cutting wise, a little bit more efficient. Especially out in this area, because there's huge air gaps. So if I don't want it to bounce or don't want it to do anything, I got to go extremely slow, which is a good thing. It forces you to have better tool control. As you can see, I'm not always as patient with some of that as what I could be or should be. So I'm still getting a little bit of bounce out there. One more little cut and we're there. But I am very vigilant on when it comes to doing the green work. As you see, I got the calipers out right away. I want this to be less than an eighth of an inch difference from top to bottom, thickness wise. That would give me the best chance for it to dry without cracking. One benefit of not turning very fast at this point, it's now also not throwing the chips a country mile away from me on that side. We're getting there. At least we're round into that point. That's probably about all the further in we're going to get before it turns not round. Now we should have taken a bunch of weight out of it. So we gained some RPMs out of it. Now we're at a whopping 720. But every little bit helps. You know, even if I could get this to 1,000, it would make the outside part a whole lot easier. The outside being where the wings are at. Less time in between air in between the air spaces. So let's check our dimensions. I haven't lost my touch on that. We're like dead on going down through there. I slide it on the inside. It's easier to slide it on the inside looking at the outside. That's scary. I'm almost perfect to where I'm at right now as far as in there. If it makes you feel better, you can move the tool rest in a little bit. Not really going to benefit me a whole lot. The reason I say that, I mean, it's going to benefit me right there, there, there. But once I start to make the corner, it's not going to make any difference. Oh, well, I can't help you there. Unless you want to come to my house, I can help you with that. We have gotten into they opened a store in town where I live that's like almost like, my wife considers it like a craft show that we don't have to man. We just pay a space, fee for a space. They collect all the money and do all that good stuff, and we pay basically a monthly space rental, and they do all the rest. Well, they had an event in town yesterday. These people were trying to figure out, good ways of getting people to know they're there, know it's there. Well, this little event yesterday, because my wife went in and helped them while I was teaching classes. She wanted something different to do. She said you couldn't even walk in the store. And I don't know what the actual number was. I sold like probably 6, 8 things, maybe 10 things. Our space is not very big. I don't have a ton of stuff in there. But when I come home last night, looks in there and she goes, you know, you sold this, 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 and this. And one of the things is tops. And I'm like, well, you created an inventory sheet on that stuff. I said, you go and look at your inventory sheet. That means that there's 0 tops left in there. So that's another project. They all like the spinning tops, mushrooms, trees. I don't think I've sold a bowl in there yet, but you know, people's money's tight or whatever. I mean, I get that. So they want the little things that are basically, for the most part, less than $10 or $15. So they just keep buying this little stuff. But it all adds up at the end of the day. So where are we at down here? I'm getting a little fatter as I went down, which is always a plus. I don't have a whole lot more depth to go. The bottom can be a shade bit thinner because there's a tenant down there. But I'm also thicker right in that area. I can feel the ridge. So we'll get rid of that and then round out the bottom. One done. Now we'll start sweeping the curve on the very bottom. Stop and measure. Like what I see. So just the last little bit. It can be golden. Actually, it's one of the places. If you're watching Richard Raffin, he just loves his scrapers. And I do have a couple that I made. One of which would be a bowl scraper. This is probably, let's go millimeters. It's 10 millimeters thick by 30 millimeters wide. So 10 millimeters is over 3/8 of an inch. No, yeah, well, unfortunately, I make too much of it. So it has to go somewhere. I don't have that many friends to give things away. And also, the tools are not free. I mean, the wood that I use is generally is free, but I still have to buy tools and such things as that. So I don't ask the big dollars for it like some people do, but I'm basically letting other people pay for my hobby, so to speak. I would not want to do it like those production turners do it and turn 8, 10 hours a day every day of the week. That would not be in my vocabulary. I do not enjoy doing any kind of production work. I've only ever did a little bit of production work on lathe and didn't particularly care for it then. So if it survives, I think that'll be a pretty interesting looking bowl. Although my dad says this mulberry stuff is going to be like a lot of the other like Osage orange and all that stuff, that it's going to turn brown after time. I mean, it's fairly, it's so wet it's hard to see. Actually, there's some right there. It should be a bright sort of a brighter yellow when it dries, I think. At any rate, it's going to be a whatever color it ends up here, and it's got a nice white ring because of the sapwood on the outside. So it should have some visual interest once it's done and dried. I'll fit this over here on something non-metal. You don't need to rust something. We're going to keep on trucking, so to speak. So the next ones are going to be holly. If you've ever get the opportunity to turn some holly, it's really nice to turn. It's a very, very even grain. Let me get rid of this. And this log here is pretty even. It's got to have a little bit of a hump on that side. Otherwise, it's actually pretty even. It's just showing some little cracks in the middle, which is not surprising. I cut it the other day, and that was the end of the log where it was at when he gave it to me. So he had painted it, but as you can see, painting it does it good, but I'm still going to lose a couple inches off of that end, which is okay. It is a tree. There's more growing. And the better part is that, it was zero cost. So a little waste. And it's not waste because I have people that burn firewood. Actually, the guy just called me the other day wanting to know whether I had my bins full, my barrels full. There's some big, giant sized garbage cans. And he wants them, and doesn't want to come over, travel 7 inches. Would be pushing it. So 7.
and two. I should be able to get 2 7s out of it. We'll try. I have 2 logs here, the same, pretty much the same thing. Although this one is slightly smaller, I think. Yes. So 2 7s, probably 2 6s. Not sure whether I want to do them all. Might do one each way. Maybe we'll do the 7s since it already has some cracks in there. Maybe we'll do them in the fashion of just a normal kind of flat rim bowl. It's got a bunch of, it's got some sort of scars on it, I guess. Probably what they are from whatever, cutting the tree down or something along those lines. So same as I did with the big log, I just literally lay that on there. My first cut will come straight across, and I'll just nip the corners off, or straight across, and maybe probably just go reasonably straight across on this, and it really won't matter. And then we'll find a center point. If I'm going to do them as a flat rim bowl, I might just put them on the worm screw from there. Let's see what it looks like once we cut them. The worm screw would definitely make it faster. They're also small enough. Yeah, cut the corners off. Of course, anytime we're cutting on the bandsaw, like that, my fingers are out here on the very corner. You gotta watch where your fingers are going, because your concentration is where the blade is cutting around a circle like that. So you could just as easily get your fingers in the wrong place and no longer have a finger. The two of them ready to go. We could also just basically, to get back to our center point on this side, we could just simply take and lay that back on there as close as what we can think we can get. And we can just color that in the bottom. And that'll give us enough of a mark, drill a hole, and we'll go right to a worm screw from there. And that should be good. I have them poster board. That's all it is poster board. Some of the bigger ones are actually picture frame mat board, which is more of a substantial cardboard, but it also costs a little bit of money to have to do it, to use that kind of stuff. So the ones that I use for the really big ones, I have up to 17 inches, I think, something like that. Those there, I was at I don't know, probably a Hobby Lobby or one of them places, and they had a piece of mat board there on clearance because it was, like everything else, if it sits around long enough, gets damaged and whatnot, and nobody's going to pay the full price for it So I bought some that were on the clearance. They were actually very, very cheap. They're only like $3 for a full size mat board, which is like 30, like 30 inches wide, 36, 38 inches long, something like that, 40 inches long for like $3. So for $3, I have nice patterns if I want to do something really big. And it's really helpful on something really big because then you can get it in balance quicker, easier. So, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. That size, that size. Here we can probably go to a big truck, or big jaws. Gives us more support out there. Yeah, that's what we'll do. This chainsaw cuts, so it's not real super duper flat. So the bigger footprint I can get, the better off I'll be. Go back over to there. This camera needs to come over a bit. Bit more. There we go. My father would be yelling at me right now. I left my hand off the chuck key, which I don't really want to do. I had somebody in my class yesterday do that, and he actually even walked away from the lathe. And I said, "Hey," I said, "you're making a bit of a mistake." And he's like, "What for?" I said, "That chuck key's still sticking in there." So what happens if you walk back over there and have a brain fade because you come over here to ask the question and that, and then you go back and you don't think about what you're doing, you reach over and hit the start button. I said, now we got a little projectile coming across the room. We have a gap there, another gap there. So it's really only sitting on these two outside corners. But like I say, it's small cracks in there. It's actually going to be a small, shallow bowl. But it is what it is. I think we'll true up the outside a little bit first. Make life a little bit easier, I think. Just to see what we have, what we're going to have to work with. Also see whether we have any edge left on our tool. So these will be a lot easier. I'm already up around 800 RPMs, and I'm sure once we get moving a little bit further on these, it's going to let us go much quicker sooner. Tool could be sharper, but I want to get rid of this. What I really want to do is get around on the bottom side and get rid of the bark. That's where all the dirt's going to be and knock the edge off the tool anyhow. But one little cut to get it close to being round, pretty close. This is the wonders of Holley, is it does get some gray streaks in it, which almost makes them look dirty. I didn't have the choice on when this stuff was cut because it was given to me, and I would assume it was cut right now. They tell me if you're going to get Holley, if you have the opportunity to get Holley and get it in the middle of the winter, then it stays snow white through its life, which I have some that I got previous. Never really turned much in the way of bowls in it. I just use and probably I have more of this. There's another several feet of this log, so I will probably, at that rate, as big as this log was, or half the log, I would probably cut like 2.5 inch squares out of it and leave it as spindle stuff, because it does make some really nice like finials and things like that because it is so white and it's very tight grain.
So even when it's nice and dry, it still cuts really well, really clean. So there's the outside part, the bark's gone. Straight into the bark. So if you're working with stuff with bark on it, go straight through the bark. That way you don't get whacked in the head with the little pieces, usually. A little bit of bark left. And then our bottom is flat, relatively. Still a little bit of an area up in there that I didn't touch, but that's okay. Once we make our shape, we'll get to that. We'll probably have to, maybe not. Thinking we're gonna have to change the belt back. Sounds like the motor is running 100 mile an hour because it's on the low speed slowly. So the motor is running quite fast, actually. Certainly is not gonna hurt it. Just makes a little bit more noise than normal. We get rid of that last little bit of bark before we venture over to the grinder and sharpen things, sharpen them, or at least try and get rid of the bark, and then I'll switch gouges over to the other gouge first. Getting rid of the corner. Not quite round up at the top yet, I don't think. Leave a big tendon on it. We're definitely going to come down into there. There's some little, I didn't quite get all the pith out of it, and there's still some little radial cracks coming down from that. So they got to go when we flip it around. Or do it the other way around and actually take some off the top right now. That way I know where my shape's going to be, where it's going to end up at. The razor blade goes away. Not quite. Really gotten used to, and really, it almost looks like a wormhole in there. Is getting rid of the sharp edges, because I have a tendency to touch things while spinning. And that's partly because of teaching classes that I caution all of them and warn them all that, so that they don't touch it while it's spinning. And of course, I tell them, the typical scenario of do as I say, not as I do, because I will touch things while it's spinning for them.
but I also know where to touch and where not to touch. I don't like the burr holes. Okay, switch over to the sharp one, or sharper one. This one should allow me to get very close to the tenant. To be able to make one nice clean cut, get my shape down pat. Picking up a bump up there. Oh, I know what it is. I was gonna say, why would that be bumping up there? But just some stupid wormholes. Still a little bit of that little bugger left. We'll see what it does on the inside. I'll be here in half an hour. Got plenty to do tonight. I'll be here for probably probably another hour, something along those lines. But thanks for stopping by. Still little buggy holes. We're gonna live with that. Let's make a clean cut across the foot. Just because we can and we're here. Back to the spindle guides to make our tenant. Finishes out our shape. Could put, no, I didn't do a very good job. Easier to use with the corner of a skew. So I can mark a center point. We're down the road. So that's the outside complete. Whenever people tell you that the worm screws don't hold something well, as you can see, I can't even unscrew it. So we're going to have to release it out of the choke, hopefully. I think I'll get the check open far enough to get the worm screw to fall out. Why aren't you falling out of there? It'll fall out once it has a place to fall out. Of course, I use a little bit more of the screw than what the Richard Raff and some of the other people would use. I just don't trust them that well not to use the extra bit of screw in there. This means that we're going to take a wrench and remove the worm screw. Not that big of a deal as far as I'm concerned. Grain direction is this direction, so I'm going to put that between jaws, straight up and down, or crossways. Straight up and down is easier because it's easier to see, as far as I'm concerned. Tighten up. Wrench to take that out. Find wrench first. Lock spindle. This one only has 2 flat spots on it. Some of them have multiples. It won't take much to get it started, as you can see, but it wouldn't release once I move this wrench out. You'll be able to see why. You see it was touching there, there, and there. It was really only making good contact in 3 places, so that made it all the tighter because of that. But it works. Made it really simple to do. Curious to see what these holes do, because it still left them out there. They'll probably fall out, I think. So we'll get it down to a flat. Always spinning by hand, turn our speed down, bring our speed back up. We're up a little over 1,000. Easier if I clean it off a little bit first, where you don't get the little bounce on the entry cut. Okay, let's make stop and check. See whether there are defects. There was one of those cracks that went straight through. It still might end up shortening this top a little bit more. Still a little crack there. There's a couple more little bug holes. These will probably still leave this one probably 3/4 of an inch thick maybe. And probably tomorrow, I think I'm going to get to work in the shop most of the day tomorrow. So I probably will get the microwave out tomorrow. And these will get the microwave treatment. And then we'll basically be ready to finish turning by about probably Tuesday or Wednesday of this week. Flatter rim, sharp, soften the corner. It looks like 3/4 of an inch, probably not. Give it an eyeball. Oh, my eyeball's working pretty good. That's almost like dead on 3/4 of an inch. Come on, you little chip. Chip, stay right on that tip, carving up the cutting edge. Mmm. Do we have another crack in here? Good indication. Oh, that was one of those. Must have been one of those. It is. One of them bug holes that went straight across. So as I went into it, saw the chip, the tool bounced and the chip come flying out. Because there was nothing there. Well, I should probably be a good boy and grab the calipers. And we'll set them for this thickness. Make sure, yeah, we're getting a little fatter as we went down. Our curve needs to go a little deeper before it curves. A little chippy on that edge where I turned that off. Actually, I think before I move on, if cracks are there, they'll probably just open up as it dries. And in this case, it's going to be dried relatively quickly. Let's see what it does. Got a vermin. Bug poop. Bug poop, it doesn't want to come out. It definitely going to be a very, very shallow bowl. There's another. I think we're going to leave that alone. Generally, that type of bug evidence is that big, almost like a big fat worm type that bores into some of this stuff. The microwave will incinerate them. Need to stop and check. Remove more out of the middle. Oh yeah, little bugger goes straight across there. Must have went straight across and out the other side by the looks of it. So once it's dry and I get down to more of the right thickness, oh, I finally got his poop finally come out the corner. Oh well. So we're still a little bit fatter at about an inch down. So right down in there. So I need to go a little deeper before it curves. We might also take a little bit more out of the thickness. That's just about right. A little less evidence of the worm track. There's still going to be some. But the guy that gave me the wood this will get returned to him. And those people feel that adds character to it. So it's like if it suits him, it suits me. When it comes to that. But it does cut, as you can see. I mean, it just flat out cuts super smooth right from the get-go. And we're like dead even the whole way down through there. So that's a definite plus. So I've done something right. Off to the next one. Like I said, I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to do both of these little flat rim bowls first. And then we'll see what time it is. I do have more tops to make. Also, I've got to clean up the mountain of chips that's now at my feet. This is the same way as the other one. There's a bit of cracking going on. I'm not going to go back to the really big jaws. We'll just stick with these. This is the one I'm going to use on the outside anyhow. A little smaller footprint in the middle, in the big area of it. Down to very slow. And we'll just mount it on with the worm screw. Watching where it gets tight at. Yeah, that's going to give us a nice little bit of daylight here and there, but not as much as what the other one was. But we know we're going to lose. Definitely going to lose down to this area, right in there because of that crack. See if the other one, I can't see where there's. Says there looks like there's little cracks in there. That's where we're going to start. We're going to get rid of the. We'll just get rid of the little cracks on the outside. Actually, I think first order of business, we're going to take the two mats out. We're going to go sharpen these two tools. Don't really need good spindle gouge sharpen, but we're going to sharpen the um, two bowl gouges that we're using. I could cheat and just pick up a different one out of the drawer, at least for this one. This one actually gets ground freehand. Don't look like that's set quite right. Let me get the gunk off the end first. Get closer. It won't take much to sharpen it because I was trying to explain to the people last 2 days in class is that like the last thing I was doing is bowls or sharpened bowl gouges last because this arm moves in and out and you can never get it super like exact every time. Just like I can't sharpen freehand as well as what I'd like to. I ended up with a little bird's beak and it's always on the left side. Increase that angle a little bit. Worse. And good on that side. We're going to live with that little bit of a bird's beak in it. Bird's beak's actually on both sides a little bit. Definitely a bit of an art that I'm working on, but I'm not getting to where I want it to be yet. Where I can go over there like some of those guys that do it all the time and just literally take 2 seconds to sharpen a tool. It just isn't quite working that way for me. Nice and slow. Bring up our speed. Being balanced, so we should be able to go right up to a little less than 1,000 right off the bat. Gonna make our cut very efficient in the first go around. Also, when I'm doing this, I am totally out of totally out of the line of fire because I'm off to the left side of my lathe. So we'll smooth this top up, and then we'll take a look at where that crack's at. just sort of a scraping cut. Plunge cut straight in and a little scrape coming back out. Clean on that end, not on that end. That's where the crack is at. So a little bit further down. Also get rid of it before
We even start on the bottom. That should be it right there. Razor blade. Clean, clean. That's what we want to see. Clean, clean, and cleaner.
Come right around right to the corner. Get rid of the corner and then we'll make the bottom flat. Always spinning by hand to make sure nothing's going to hit. Never a good day to whack the tool rest. Corner gone. Almost gone. Would almost be tempting to leave a little patch of bark in there, but I can't imagine it's not going to be even. I would not imagine. It doesn't look very nice because that's where the dark streaking's coming in instead of the nice
Snow White color as everything else. Make a nice clean cut to the middle. The way our tennant is very highly visible and nice and flat on the bottom. Because at this size of a bowl, I make this tennant a little oversized from the start. Chances are when it's dry, at least that's the hope and plan, that we can just use it from there. And we can incorporate that into being our foot on the final finished piece. I kind of like to gotten into this thing of leaving the tennant and making the tennant into a foot, if I can. I just think it gives it a nice look. Makes it nice and simple. Could be one nice clean cut, shallowing it up at the top. Could be one clean cut right straight off the end. Razor blade goes away again. And remove, make that into a curve. Step back and look. And my eye says it's a nice flowing curve from here to there. But there's another bug hole in there. I touched it, and right in here somewhere. Yep, right there's another bug hole. Dirty little buggers. Okay. Rid of that sharp edge. Center point might be useful. There we go. That might go. It's still quite tight. And went to the bigger size drill bit. I'd rather struggle a little bit to get them off than use too big of a drill bit, and then we don't have quite the grip. Okay, try and them down that way. Good and tight. Always free spin. Slow down. Back to where we were. Thereabouts. Get the goop off the tool. Flatten out a bit. Come on. It also left me little steps in there by doing it that way. I can just lay the tool in there. I don't necessarily have to roll back over, pick up the cut. It automatically drops in those little steps. Almost. Flat rim helps as well. Also, there isn't so much crow there. I don't want it quite that thin. Stop and measure. This one's a little thinner than the other one. We're going to be alright. Thickening up as we go down. Always the right way to be. A little easier to take more off than it is to try and put something back on. We'll start just inside the rim. Get off a little bit more. Also switch gouges to a sharper gouge. They do not stay sharp forever, especially when you start cutting through that bark. There's tons of dirt in there, which has a tendency to knock the edge off the tool very quickly. Also likes to stick to the back of the tool. Now we should be able to make one final check before we do that. Close enough. It works. Number 2 done. Rid of this pile of chips before it's up in front of the camera. Left a ridge. Gotta get rid of that. I wouldn't really have to, but it's there, so I'll pick up the cut behind the little ridge, go through it, finish the cut at center. So now that makes me happier. I don't know why, but it does. There we go. Number 3 done. So another little holly bowl, another little vermin mark, another pooper on there. Pooper on there probably comes up to that one. This looks like there could be another one there. They won't be happy tomorrow when they get nuked in the microwave, for sure. It's always sort of advantageous if I have multiple ones to do in the microwave because they put them in there for 30, 40, 50 seconds at a shot, and then they have to cool because even at 30 or 40 seconds on full power, they get quite warm quite quickly. I don't think that. I don't think that's going to. I don't think that's going to look good as a natural edge piece. Cracks on that end. So if I get rid of the cracks down into about there, we're going to have to see whether we're actually going to get 2 out of this. Somewhere thereabouts, because I said these would only be about 6 inches, 6.5. If I did 6, and 12, another 6 gives me about 1.5 inches on that end, which has cracks as well. I think we'll be able to get them. So now we just have to try and mark this up the side of the bark. Well, I can't cut them. I can't run that through the bandsaw on that side. As you can see, it would just rock. As soon as it touched the bandsaw blade, it would slam it down.
and chances are that it could slam it down to the point of breaking the bandsaw blades. And the blades I use, or I like to use, or using, are the Carter and Son Greenwood 3/8 inch Greenwood blade. Once again, like a lot of other stuff nowadays, they used to be more in the $20 to $25 range. Now they're more like $40 range. So I'd rather just kind of get the life expectancy out of it rather than breaking it.
Very soft patch first. I don't need to go straight on that one. I can make the curve on the opposite end. One down. One down. Sort of even it up side to side. So two more and then we'll be done. What's up, Billy? Being like you, I'm being messy. Doing some nice green. These are actually holly. They're actually really quick to do. We're doing them as a flat rim bowl rather than a natural edge. I do have more logs of this, so I might do some a little bit later. Yeah. Well, my shop's pretty messy too. I must say that. Too many things going on right now, and you get sidetracked and that. So a drill a hole for our worm screw underneath. And we'll be ready to go back to town. Get the right check key, it helps. Doesn't work very well with the little check key. Into that. And put some back there. Nice and slow. This side of the log doesn't have any. Get rid of them cracks on the end. So this and that, these, probably this side period is going to be easier than the other side was. The other half of the log had a bunch of
cracks because when my trusty chainsaw work didn't exactly go through the pith, so we ended up with some little cracks that we had to deal with a little bit. I'll clean this up here. So we know we're going to harness. Yeah. Now we're pretty much in balance and bring the speed up a bit, make our cutting much more efficient. Never move the tool rest while it's running. Give us a tenant. We're getting down fairly close to that area. Doesn't need to be very deep. It's not a very big bowl. Fat eighth of an inch, 3/16, more than enough. One more little clean cut bottom to top. Maybe not the whole way to the top, but clean the bottom up. Okay. Oh no. Shoot. I was wondering, I thought I felt something ticking. Didn't get quite enough off. I don't want the black spot. I want these to be as white as they can be. And we could do that another way of
Sinking in. It's still there, I think. A little bit. Mm. I guess that means one more cut. Thought I could see the dark coming around. I think I still see a dark spot. Tiny bit. Once it's dry, that'll go away. Good enough, fair enough. Finish the cut to the rim. Razor blade goes. Blade and it should be clean, but I left the sharp corner on that. Very. The guy just brought it to me on Tuesday of this week, and I would assume that it was probably just cut. I think he said it was, but just cut within the last day. So it's probably a week or less. I can go get the moisture. I can go get the moisture meter and see how bad it is. It's it's uh it's plenty wet. Yeah, yeah. There's no doubt about that. I can't say that I can feel a spray or water coming off, but it's only a 6-inch piece. The first piece I did, which was a piece of mulberry, it was actually even wetter yet. That was throwing water. This one wasn't really throwing water, but it's wet to the touch. These are there's there's going to be a total of 4 of them. I sort of intend to work in the shop tomorrow, not tomorrow, the next day. These are going to go in the microwave and get dried that way, hopefully. I've had pretty good success doing that. I don't think my tendon's very, not quite what I would like it to be. That's going to spin true enough, so we're right there. Um, Moisture content. I'm gonna guess it's probably in the high 20s, low 30s. If I had to guess. According to that, 21%. Ah, there's better yet. 27%. Yeah, it's got a bit of moisture to it. Like I say, if we get to do it tomorrow, I will See if we can get them down to equalize. Come back a little later on this week, or even wait till next weekend and come back and finish turning them. That would be that's my goal, is to actually be able to finish turning these four little ones sometime later this week or even next week. I'm going to go back to my turning club meeting in December. Then I can hand him four little bowls. Hey, you remember that holly you just gave me? There's your four bowls back. He likes that. I'm going to take the 2 seconds out and change belts. The mulberry was not cooperating. Well, it was considerably out of balance, even at the end, because of the way the tree grew. I had to turn that one very slowly, but that's not something I normally do. I'm a bit of a speed demon in that aspect. But all these lathes that has two belts on it, so if we're down too low in the speed range, then it doesn't have the horsepower. So I could slow it down very quickly, and I didn't want to do that. Clean. Leave it about 3/4 of an inch thick. Get rid of the sharp corner. Sharp corners is where it will crack first, because it dries so quickly there. Got a trusty thickness gauge out. Even though I'm going to do them in the microwave, I still want them to be very consistent thickness wise. I also got to remember I gave that a different shape in the outside. Got a little bit of thickness right there. Otherwise, a little bit further down to go, not much. So I'm also clean up that area first. It's already pretty clean, but short bevel is still pretty much about the same, 55 to 60 degrees, but it has flat wings, or at least it's supposed to. This is freehand ground, where I have good days and bad days, probably more bad than good. I end up with a little bit of a bird's beak in there, but it doesn't seem to have made it real aggressive, even with that little beak in there. But it cuts super clean. It also only has a bevel that's about 1/8 of an inch long, which is really what makes it cut clean. Also, if you hand it to somebody that doesn't know how to use the tools very well, it's actually kind of funny to watch, because they cannot stay on the bevel because it's so small.
Because that's one of the things I do to some of the people in my class when they feel like they're first time turning a bowl and they feel like they're a master class. And I give them something totally different to use and they can't use it. And they're like, I said, see, I said, once you get to the level of maybe like where I'm at or beyond, you should be able to pick up pretty much any tool, any bevel, and use it reasonably well. I said, because it's just a bevel and a cutting edge. So you should be able to stay on the bevel and stay on the cutting edge no matter what. Not the nicest curve that I've ever made. Very, very thin angel hair shavings come off of it. And the same token, it will, I mean, there's the angel hair that's coming off. Cuts perfectly clean, straight around. I still missed that home. I should probably quit playing because right in there is probably where I could. There's where I could actually get thin. Still got room. Okay, that's better. I know it's better now. I'm happy. Good enough for green wet turn. Try it out tomorrow. Back at it. Kind of cute little bowls. I found that since we're in this craft consignment place, why little is good because that makes it less money. People are a little bit more willing to part with their money. And as you see, we have a whole lot less time and effort into it. So good for us, good for me. Whole lot of rinse and repeat. So I try and explain to those people is this doesn't happen overnight. Can't go to one class and take a bolt turning class and now you're a master of disaster. It just takes a few hundred to get down to a science. Check for cracks, none there, and none there. Wonderful. Does have bark on it, so we can't go that fast. Nope. Wants to vibrate pretty quickly. That's okay. We're going to get it squared away. Took a pretty healthy cut, but I could also see that there was that. The guy does the bandsaw with. He just doesn't create a really, really great circle. So, I don't know, Mechaform This is also being broadcast on Twitch, in case you've never been here. Being done on Twitch and YouTube. So, yeah. Well, it's a half a log. It'll turn into a nice little bowl in the next 10 minutes or so, or less. This is the bark side of it. I'm turning them into little flat rim bowls. Yes. Actually, we can come in maybe a little bit closer. Yeah, you can see on the screen the dark parts are where the bark is still at. So ideally, we will get rid of all of them. Give a little flat spot in there. We will put a tenon on it. I'll mark the tenon, then I know where all my cuts are going from and to. Hopefully that's big enough. It should be. Find out very directly. What's what's tempting? To get a lathe and start turning some wood instead of metal? That's a whole heck of a lot messier than what you're dealing with. Right now on the floor, just from this evening, well, this is going to be the last one I do. When I clean up tonight, the amount of chips that's on the floor will fill up a contractor size trash bag without a whole lot of trouble. A little different shape than the other one. This one doesn't really. Tiny bit of remnants of where that bark was at. That's what the dark spot is. These are going to be left thick, so that should go away when it's dry and we return it. Give us the pennant to hold on to. Sure it's nice and clean in that corner. That's really where these are dovetail jaws. That's where it's going to grip at. Doesn't really need a flat or very little flat in there. Get rid of these marks. Little rounded corner. Flat bottom. Center point for later. We go to once it's dry, we go to rechuck it. At this point, it can be flat. Eventually, when it's dry, and I would finish off whatever foot area, it's going to be slightly concave, so it only sits on these outside a little eighth of an inch or something like that, or less even. That way, as the seasons change and the piece of wood moves, even though you think it's, it's dry to what you expect it to be, it still will absorb moisture and lose moisture throughout the changes in the seasons. So if it was perfectly flat, and that's one of the places it will move, then it rocks on the table and you look like an idiot. So a little concave takes care of that problem. There's another one that you can do on that same scenario and actually give it 3 little feet. That's something I can't say that I've ever really tried. It just looks, you're kind of lazy. It just looks like too much work. There's too much heavy duty grinding, sanding to get to 3 feet. But that's another way of doing it. Because 3 feet, no matter what it does, will always sit flat. This is wet wood though. Somebody asked me earlier how wet. I checked the moisture content, and I was up around 27%. So it's got plenty of water in it. Also is why it makes my job easier to cut. It's basically lubricating the cut. It's softer than what it will be when it's dry. Although this is American holly, holly is not really a hardwood. Holly is sort of an in-between wood in most cases. It's very straight grain. Has really no figure, no real character to it except that it's snow white. But it does a lot of interesting stuff. Well, they tell me, I'm not the wood expert. Um, it depends on what time of the year it was cut. If holly is cut in the wintertime, when there's less moisture, less sap up in it, then it stays really snow white. When it's cut earlier in the year, then it doesn't. Yeah, I don't know. This stuff here, I was well pleased. The only place it had any of the discoloration was around the bark. So that's kind of why I didn't do them and leave the bark on them and do them as more of a natural edge piece. Because I'd like them to stay nice and white. At least that's the plan. I'll leave them somewhere about 3/4 of an inch thick. These are going to get, at least we'll try the first, at least 2 of them. They have a pretty good size, pretty good length of this log. This log was probably about 4 feet long. It's was only about 8 inches in diameter, something like that. Oh yeah, that is one thing it will do. Well, it all will, especially when it's wet. I'm trying to keep my hand there because they will be right on that camera. But yeah, they're nice fluffy things. They also are flying further than what I want them to. I like to try and keep the mess contained directly in front of me rather than it drops off the end of this into a kind of a no man's land kind of a hole. And I don't necessarily want that. So got a wall thickness we should check. Well, I do want this to be very consistent thickness wise. Gives me the best chance, even though I'm going to microwave it. I've only went in there a little bit. You can see a little ridge where that bumps against. That's consistent for that first inch. And now I'll just continue that down.
Switch to a little bit different profile gouge. Has a very small bevel, very small cutting bevel on it. Yes, it's a bit of a time-consuming process in a way. Time-consuming in as in that you don't put it in the microwave and go from 27% down to, I'd be happy down around 10% in one shot. This will go in the microwave at probably like 30 to 40 seconds on high, on full power. Some people use like defrost, and then they microwave it longer. But I sort of follow some people, one of which is Richard Raffin he actually lives in Australia. I think he just said the other week, he's 80, either 83 or 84 years old, has turned professionally since he's been in his early 20s. He no longer turns professionally, production turn, and make his living turning and selling his stuff. And he loves the microwave, but he also will do it considerably longer than I would because it really gets hot very quickly on full power. On the first go around, I do it. I say I probably hit about 30 seconds, 40 seconds maybe in the first couple go arounds, and then it's going to sit there. I pull it out, sit it on the table, and I'll come back in, I don't know, maybe half an hour. Once it's cooled off, and I just kind of rinse and repeat that. I'll weigh it. That's the other thing that I will do with it. I'll weigh it using a gram scale, so it's much more accurate than like ounces. So once it once it sort of equalizes and quits losing weight, or the weight slows way down as far as how much is coming off, then it's pretty much dry. I still from there will let it sit out here in on the workbench or something like that, probably for another week, maybe even two, to see what it's going to do. Could even put it back in a paper towel or a paper bag for that period or for the first week so that it doesn't lose any more existing moisture too quickly. So the quicker it loses it, the quicker it will crack. I've had pretty good success with it. Yes. Yeah, because the moisture, that's normally what I do with them. The big one that I did earlier today, I only do these little ones in the microwave. I've never really tried anything of any real big size. Um, because they would take for one, they would take too long. I think it could be done. I wouldn't say it couldn't be done. I'm sure it could be. It's just going to take a lot longer. I mean, even this bowl of this size is probably going to take 6, 8, maybe even 10 times through the microwave. So you start getting that up in time with a half an hour in between for them to cool. I mean, you're playing around with this for 5 or 6 hours. Because once it's cool, then I want it to go back in the microwave. I don't want to leave it sit around, forget about it and say, "Oh shit, I didn't do that," and then say, "Well, I'll get it tomorrow." Well, by the time you come back tomorrow, it's already done because it's going to crack because you've started the drying process and now the air is getting to it. I mean, you could do it a couple times, once or twice or whatever, and put it in a paper bag and get away with it.
Can't leave it out in the air because it will lose moisture too quickly. I left a hump in there. That's why I come back to it. But the paper bag routine works very well for me. That's normally what I do. That also takes 8 months to a year, depending on how wet they were when they went in. And a lot of times what depends on what time of the year. Because like for me in the summertime, they're going to be in my basement, which is a finished basement, the other part of it, other than my shop, and it has a dehumidifier in it. So in the summertime, there's more than enough moisture in the basement because it's summertime that the dehumidifier runs. I empty it every day, which is 70 quarts or something like that. It's like a gallon. No, not quarts. Pints, I guess it is. It's like about a gallon and a half of water every day. So even in the wintertime when it really doesn't run much because I have hot air heat, if I do a bunch of this kind of work, because it's in that room where the dehumidifier is at, it will run a lot, which also helps these to dry quicker. But yeah, so take the truck off because that's the last one we're going to do. 8:40, and it's 2 hours and 40 minutes. That's enough. Are you getting any snow up there yet, Mechaform? If you're still here. Uh, I'll go get the other band of merry little ones. Go to there and want the wide way. So there's what we've gotten done on screen. Yeah. So there's my 2 hours and 40 minutes worth of work tonight, this evening. Now we now we get to clean up the mess. Yes. Yeah, you can be. A little bit of time and practice, and yeah. This one here took the longest by virtue of when I flip it over on its side, you'll see this is considerably is lower than this side. It also on this side actually rolls down over the edge. So this thing was not, you could not get this thing in balance to be able to spin it very fast. Not to mention it's in that 25 to 30% moisture range too. It's fresh cut as well. But these little guys, they don't take very long. And you can see on the video that there's little lines and everything in there. I mean they're cleanly cut, but it's certainly nothing that I would consider finished cleanly cut. It's just kind of a rough cut just to get the general shape and thickness, and then we go from there. Oh, probably about somewhere between a quarter and 3/8. Probably lean more towards the quarter side. Somewhere between there, quarter and 3/8, something like that. Some of this will be determined by how much this stuff actually moves. I can't say that I've ever done any of the bowls in the Holly, so I really don't know how much distortion it's going to move. So I mean, if this would happen to decide it's going to move by, let's say, 3/4 of an inch, and it will shrink, so our grain
Our grain is running this direction across this. So all of our movement will be from this outside edge towards the center. So when they become egg shaped, it's because this came in, not because that went out. Because this is end grain. End grain really doesn't move, but the side grain is what loses the moisture and then goes towards the center. And they can move a lot. Some of them. Some bowls move a lot. And it's another one of them, kind of scenarios that you have no idea which one's going to do what. Some woods move a lot more than others. Even some different pieces out of the same tree. You just don't know. That's why you leave them plenty thick. The natural edge stuff is going to be left at probably 3/8 to a half inch thick, finished. These will be thinner because they are smaller. If you go too thin, then people, I mean, I try and sell pretty much all this stuff. Although these four here, if I get these four finished, I may keep one. The other three will go back to the guy that gave me the wood because he's involved with the Pennsylvania Forestry Association, and they do some sort of charity kind of banquet every year. I think it's in January, I want to say, something like that. So he always likes to get a bunch of this stuff back, and he donates it. And he looks like a champ because he gets all this stuff donated back, and he gets to donate it to them, and they raffle it off and get the money. And he even comes back after that meeting to our wood turning meeting the following month, and he has a whole list of whose stuff he had and whose stuff brought what amount of money, which is kind of neat. But and it's a charity event, so that the charity stuff, I mean, people are willing to spend good money on any of the handmade stuff. I donate some stuff. My dad self donates some stuff to uh, I would call it a youth um, church camp that the kids go to in the summertime and whatnot. And they do a benefit auction, which was just a couple of weeks ago. And those people were not afraid to spend their money. They spend some ridiculous money on some of that stuff, as my dad would pretty quick to tell you, because he's made stuff. Well, we both have for quite a few years. A certain amount of stuff. My dad likes to make mushrooms, and this year down there, um, he had like two different sets of mushrooms. Mind you, these mushrooms are only about that big. It's made out of white birch, I think that I got for him. It still had the bark on, so it had the white paper bark birch on them. They were kind of nice and neat. Um, he don't have quite the skill level to make them super clean without sanding stuff, and I don't think he sanded them. But he had a grouping of three. They were like 3 inches, like 2.5, maybe 2 1/4. They were just went downhill just a little bit. They put them together as a group of three, and they sold for 50 some dollars. And I'm like, yeah, it's just, and it just blows his mind that people were willing to spend that. I'm like, they're just donating to the church camp. But these people just keep bidding on it. I was actually standing there watching them. It's a silent auction that they do. And there was people hovering around that. There was somebody hovering, a couple people hovering around his mushrooms. I had a little walnut bowl. It was actually a failure on my end because it was supposed to be something else, and it was only 5 inches in diameter and like inch and 3/4 deep. I mean, it was okay, but I would have probably only asked $10 to $15 for it at a craft show or something along those lines. The last I saw somebody bid on that, it was up into 40 something dollars going. The other one was I make spinning tops. I make these almost year round now for unknown reasons. I only get $3 a piece for them at a craft show, or we're now in a craft store. They're at $3 a piece. They grouped them up there at three of them, and they brought like 15 or $18 for the three, and then they had a group of two, and the group of two brought almost the same amount of money. But some of it's crazy, but these this is one of the dumb things that actually does sell. I'm up to We did one craft show, and like I say, now we're in this like consignment type store for crafts. I had 12, I think it was either 12 or 14 of them in there at the craft store. They just sold out yesterday. So 24 to 26 of those tops that I've made and sold so far this year in a couple little outings that we've had. I mean, you're certainly not going to get rich on it, but if you sell enough of them, yeah, it's a fairly good chunk of change to make. Keeps me in tool supply and things like that, which is what it's all about. So there's our stack of four, stack of one, and then we are going to be done. Unless somebody has any other questions, comments. I don't really have a camera that would show the floor as to how much of a mess we actually made. Uh, Especially it's spread out. I just kicked one of the piles off to the side, but oh well, yeah. I mean, yeah, you're doing the metal lathe work. I mean, the plumb bobs. Yeah. Thank you, Billy. And we'll see you Wednesday. Billy, we'll see you Wednesday night because I am the goofball that's going to do a demonstration on Wednesday night. So hopefully I can come up with something that's entertaining. I think I did, but oh, absolutely not. Nope. I gave up on that one a long time ago. You can never figure out what somebody's going to want to buy at a craft show or anything like that. No, nope. There's no, there's never any rhyme or reason. Well, I think unless I change my mind, I think we'll be doing a small pottery shaped bowl with a curly maple lid and a different kind of a knob on top of it. I've already done one of these, and even my critic, which is my wife, she's like, I really like that. I'm like, good. I hope somebody else does it. Is willing to buy it or wants to buy it. But I think that's what we'll be doing Wednesday night. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you can't. I know some people that actually one of my wife's friends got into turning pens, and that's all she does. And she talks with my wife or whatever, and she tells her, well, we made X number of dollars at this craft show. Oh, I think we're gonna go and do that with the pens. They do resin cast stuff like replicas of Star Wars stuff. I don't know what else. I'm trying to think what else there would be. Replicas of all kind of different movie props and things like that, right down to like the guns and well, in Star Wars it had the phasers, the whatever walkie-talkie type things they talked on. They cast all this stuff in resin, and some of it they sell unfinished, just basically as sort of a rough out. Now they can't their rough outs are actually quite clean because they're using silicone molds, but then she'll paint this stuff, airbrush paint this stuff, and it actually looks real. They showed me some uh, what was it? A replica of somebody asked him to do that one. It was a replica of a like a Colt 1911 45, which would have been, I think the one that they got would have been back in one of the World Wars, one or two. I don't remember which he told me it was. And he showed me the rough out, and I'm like, dude, I said, you can give somebody a heart attack with that. He said, oh, he said, I'll send you a picture when she's done painting it because we still have the original that we're going to try and match. And he sent me a picture of it, them sitting side by side. Now, as long as you were looking at it from the side, you wouldn't know the difference, of course. But you had trouble telling which one of them was which was real metal and which was basically plastic. Now, of course, the end of it where the barrel would be, it is solid, it's not hollow. And I told him he should be drilling them out, but yeah, it's kind of neat stuff. But she was gonna go do a craft show, and then she takes her pens along to they do this stuff at shows themselves. It's a different kind of a show than it's not a craft show. It's a I don't know what they call it type of a show. And she's taking her pens along, just doing a slimline pens, and she's made out really well. She sells, half a dozen or so every show that they go to. And now she went to an actual craft show, local craft show, where there was other people there, and I think she sold 4 or 5 pens an entire day. So at 4 pens, you didn't even make enough to cover the booth, the cost of the booth. And I just laughed at my wife. I said, if she'd asked me that question, I said, good luck. I said, because I have 8 or 10 pens with me. I said, they've been around probably for years. I said, one, maybe two a year. We don't do that many craft shows, but I said, they just don't sell. I said, people are not willing to spend the money on them, but at least in my area, put it that way. But other guys, like there's guys on there on Wednesday night that they're getting, $40 and $50 for a pen, and they say they sell them. And I'm like, that's great. I said, but it just doesn't work for me. And I don't really like to turn them to start with. Once upon a time, that's where I got started, and it was gone destined, but after, I don't know, 100, 150 of them over the years, I'm like, yeah, I'm over it. Yeah, I'm right there with you. It doesn't, they don't, they don't do nothing. Okay? Yeah, I've never tried any of them because I don't want to mess with the fountain pens. They look like they would be too messy. Yeah. Oh yeah, but I mean, everybody has their own thing they like, of course. So, yeah. So we got a pretty big mountain of chips. We're gonna fill up at least three-quarters of a 30 whatever they are, 30 some gallon contractor size trash bags. Yeah, I mean, and there again, locate locations. Now, I've never even there's a couple of guys in my turning club, and they're kind of like Owen. Owen is over in the UK, and that's a lot of what he makes is pens and pendants and earrings and that kind of stuff. And he has a market for them. But At least for me around here, no. I've had some pendants or made some of those pendants and stuff like that, and it's like, you know, I end up giving them away. Oh, resin and metal. Okay. I have not seen anybody doing any of that. What kind of metal are we talking about? Like aluminum or brass? Might look interesting, but okay. Okay. So once he adds the metal to them, he's turning them on the metal lathe rather than turning them on the wood lathe. Is that what you're? That's what I'm understanding out of you. Because I mean, if he's putting brass or aluminum, you could turn that with your normal wood turning tools just about as easily as what you can on the metal lathe. Brass, aluminum, or even copper, you can turn. Copper, you have to. It takes a little bit more of an effort. Mm. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that's yeah. Copper's a little bit more difficult. I've never really. The only copper that I've actually turned on the wood lathe and used my wood turning tools on would be like tool handles and things like that. And I'm only removing a little bit of material, but it also gets hot very quickly. I mean, I don't know. I would assume it probably gets hot. Well, I've never really worked on a metal lathe, but I would assume a lot of the shavings coming off of a metal lathe would be pretty hot too. But when they come off of the wood lathe, they're almost little smoking torpedoes. So, you know, there's a wood lathe, there's wood chips laying around. I kind of try and stay away from that one. Yeah. Well, toasty and dry wood chips wouldn't necessarily be a good combination, at least in my book. I'd like to keep my happy house. You know, I've been here for 39 years. I'd just as soon like to stay here as long as I can stay in the house, especially nowadays. I did retire about 2 months ago, so purchasing another house would be out of the question because I have no intentions of going back and doing any kind of work except the work that I want to do, which is play around in my shop. You're not counting them, right? 1008. So 3 years. Is that what you're trying to say? 3 years and you'll be done? Thousand. Yeah. Well, three and a half, actually, I guess, right? My math's not that quick. Yeah, it goes by quick. I was planning on working another year, but yeah, yeah. Well, like I say, I was going to wait another year. I just turned 64, but when we met with our financial planner, advisor, whatever the name suits best, I guess, and he's like, "What are you waiting for?" And I'm like, well, yeah. How old are you? How old are you going to be when you retire? Are you waiting till you're 65 or better? Oh, okay. I was a good boy then. I waited till I was 64. Um, primarily, I mean, you're in Canada. I don't know what they do up there, but um, primarily around here, it's more the fact of the medical insurance end of it. I'm going to end up paying for medical insurance for the next, well, for me, 9 months, and oh, I didn't wait that long. My wife was in the banking industry for 28 years, and man, I would say we had the same, okay. No, we've had a financial advisor probably since, oh my, very shortly after we got married, which would have been 39 years ago. Um, and my dad was a big saver for retirement, so that was kind of drilled into my head at a young age. And her with working in the banking industry, he sort of set us up with some simple plans that you were, whatever was affordable per month, even if it was only $50, $75, $100 a month that you could put into these retirement plans. Um, we did so, and I switched jobs. Would have been about, that's good. So we've done pretty well in that. And the company I worked for 28 years before I started working for UPS, about 17 and a half years ago, something like that it was. A little over 17 years ago, when I moved when I got away from that company because they were going basically belly up. Um, and they've already paid the retirement out because they had a retirement plan for you at that time. So I've already collected their retirement, and that, like I say, that would have been probably, it took them almost a year to catch up with that, that they were still paying the premiums on that. So in about 16 years, that actually has doubled in value. So I mean, there's there's a pretty good amount of money sitting in those areas. So when we met with him back in, I don't know, March, I think it was this year, he's like, yeah. Right, right. Yeah, that was some of the that was the other thing that I had to move off of from the other company. Um, we had a 401. We also had uh, they had went public, and we had stocks in the company, which all the money people say you should never have stocks in the company that you work for. But the price was like $1 or $1.50 a share, and they were matching that. I think the first couple of years was like dollar for dollar, something like that. So I had bought some of that, and when I left the company, then well, actually, I think it took them a year to actually pay me out. But you couldn't own stock in that company because it was employee owned, so that got paid out right away. But yeah, we've done all right on some of that. Yeah, but the financial advisors, I mean, they're worth their weight in gold. at least some of them. I mean, the one we have has been doing it for probably 40 years, maybe something like that. And it's all managed accounts, and they pay they're paying people that know what they're looking at. My son-in-law wants to do some of that on his own, and I'm like, well, that's fine if you have an understanding of what all that stuff means and want to sit there on a daily basis and look at those numbers, look at what's out there available. I'm like, I don't have time or patience for any of that. I said, that's what I'd rather pay these people a little bit of money because these people are getting paid basically off of the money that you're making. You're not paying them a flat rate. They're making a small percentage of off of what you're making. So, the money more they make for me, the more money they make. So they have some real incentive to make you money. But yeah, that's pretty much where we went for that. And like I say, it has worked out quite well, at least for now. Well, you better go get something to eat because I'm gonna go get me a cold beverage. And I'd probably love to actually be able to raid into somebody, but the last I tried this, I could not. They changed so much this stuff around. So, most likewise, it's nice chatting with you. You go get something to eat because we're gonna wrap it up and call it a night. And I'm now here on Sunday nights, in case you're interested. I used Saturdays, but Saturdays doesn't necessarily work so well anymore, so I do all Sunday nights. It also looks like, why does it look like I'm upside down on my little camera view? I must have messed something up there. Huh, I'll have to look at that. All right, but you all have a good week. And like I say, Sunday nights, 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in the US. So until next time, have a good week.